Where was your first kiss?
Her name was Lisa. It was in her garage. It was 4th grade. She was one street over.
Some feelings never fade, no matter how much time passes. For Brad Pitt, decades of fame, countless headlines, and high-profile romances could never erase the memory of one woman who truly captured his heart. After years of staying silent, he has finally spoken, revealing what many suspected but never heard from him directly. His words are more than nostalgia. They hold a raw honesty that few expected. Could this be the most revealing moment of his career? Join us as we uncover Brad Pitt's long-awaited confession about the woman he calls the love of his life. A journey of self-discovery. When you try to understand a man's greatest love, you have to start at the very beginning. This is the part that shows how he learned about love before the world decided to have an opinion. Brad Pitt was still just William Bradley Pitt from Missouri when he started dating singer Sunita in the mid-1980s. She was already a chart-topping pop star in the UK, and he was a struggling actor trying to get auditions. Sunita later described him as sweet, charming, and full of dreams. For Brad, this was the first time he'd been close to someone living in a spotlight, and it gave him an early look at how fame can affect intimacy. She was confident, playful, and knew how to work a crowd. Brad, in contrast, was still finding his way. You'd be surprised how those early differences pulled him closer to the world of celebrity. Soon after, he found himself in a relationship with actress Jill Schoelen. They met while working on the 1989 horror movie Cutting Class, one of Brad's earliest films. Jill had already been in a few high-profile relationships, and for Brad, she represented something new, someone who understood the unpredictable rhythms of an actor's life. Their romance became serious enough that Brad proposed. But in one of those moments that can sting for a lifetime, Jill broke it off just months later. She reportedly called him from the set of another film in Budapest to say she'd fallen for her director. It was a sharp lesson for Brad. Then there was E.G. Daily, a singer and voice actress, whose career was already in motion when she met Brad. Their relationship was short, but E.G. would later speak warmly about him, calling him a down-to-earth guy with a gentle heart. She introduced him to a more creative, artistic side of Los Angeles, a mix of musicians, actors, and writers who cared more about art than status. Brad absorbed it all. The parties were smaller, the conversations deeper. It was a reminder that not all love stories have to be written in the tabloids. By the late 1980s, Brad had experienced three very different kinds of romance: a confident pop star, a rising film actress, and an artistic soul. None of these relationships made him a household name, but each left a mark. He learned the thrill of being close to someone adored by the public. He learned how sudden changes in direction could end something he thought was solid. And he learned that connection didn't always depend on fame. What's interesting is how these early experiences shaped the man he would become. Without knowing it, Brad was already preparing for the public scrutiny that would follow his every romance. It was the late 1980s, and Brad Pitt was still carving out his place in Hollywood. Robin Givens was already a familiar face to TV audiences from Head of the Class. She had a smile that lit up a room, and the kind of presence that drew people in without effort. Brad met her during a period that would prove complicated for them both. Robin was in the middle of a public separation from her then-husband, heavyweight boxing champion Mike Tyson. Their marriage had been the subject of constant tabloid attention, and their breakup was even more so. Tyson was a man at the peak of his fame and ferocity in the ring, and his relationship with Robin had played out like a soap opera across the front pages. Brad and Robin's time together was brief, but it happened right in the middle of that storm. They would meet quietly, away from cameras, yet the press still found ways to connect their names. It wasn't that they were trying to make a statement. The truth was, they were just two people drawn to each other, but the timing could not have been worse. The most talked about moment came when Mike Tyson, in later interviews, claimed he once arrived at Robin's home to find Brad there. Tyson said Brad looked terrified, as if he'd been caught in the middle of something he shouldn't have been in. Whether the details were as dramatic as Tyson painted them remains unclear, but the story spread quickly. It became one of those Hollywood tales that everyone seemed to repeat, adding their own details along the way. For Brad, this was a crash course in what it meant to be caught up in someone else's headlines. He hadn't sought out drama, but drama had a way of finding him. Robin continued to face intense media coverage about her divorce, and Brad's name was often dropped into the narrative whether he liked it or not. Still, there were moments that were just theirs. Dinners in low-lit restaurants, afternoons spent away from Los Angeles, small escapes where they could be themselves without the weight of public curiosity pressing in. Those who knew them at the time have said they seemed happy together, if only for a short while. But the reality of Robin's life in the spotlight and the shadow of her breakup with Tyson made it hard for anything new to grow. Eventually, the two went their separate ways. Robin moved forward with her career and personal life. Brad returned to the uphill climb of making his mark in Hollywood. The memories of that time were left behind, but the experience would stay with him. It was the first time his name had been pulled into a national tabloid story, and it wouldn't be the last. But what would happen when the spotlight turned on him again? An unpredictable life. Brad Pitt's brief time with Christina Applegate is remembered as one of the most surprising and light-hearted episodes in his dating history. It was 1989, and both were young stars on the rise. Pitt was just beginning to appear in television guest spots and small film roles, while Applegate had already found fame as Kelly Bundy on the hit sitcom Married, with Children. Together, they made a picture-perfect young Hollywood couple, and their night out at the MTV Movie Awards seemed set to be nothing more than a fun, glamorous evening. The two arrived hand in hand, stepping onto the red carpet under a flash of cameras. Pitt, in his trademark relaxed style, looked comfortable in the public eye, even if he wasn't yet a household name. For him, this was a chance to spend time with a popular actress, mingle with the entertainment industry's up-and-coming talents, and enjoy the kind of night that could only happen in Hollywood. Everything seemed to be going as expected until it wasn't. Somewhere in the middle of the evening, Applegate made a decision that would instantly transform the night from memorable to unforgettable, at least for Brad Pitt. Without warning, she left his side. This wasn't a case of simply stepping away for a quick chat or greeting an old friend. Instead, she walked away from the date entirely and into the company of Sebastian Bach, the charismatic lead singer of the rock band Skid Row. Known for his wild hair, high-energy performances, and rebellious image, Bach was about as far from Pitt's clean-cut Hollywood persona as one could get. Applegate's decision to leave Pitt mid-date for Bach was both unexpected and, for those who witnessed it, a little shocking. In that moment, Pitt found himself alone, sitting in a room full of people who had just seen his date leave with someone else. Today, such a scene would dominate social media within minutes, with photos and videos circulating endlessly. But in 1989, without the constant presence of paparazzi and camera phones, it remained a story passed along by those in the know. Still, it was the kind of Hollywood gossip that was bound to resurface whenever people discussed Pitt's early dating life. For Pitt, it was a moment of genuine awkwardness. He had come expecting a simple, enjoyable evening, only to find himself on the receiving end of one of the more public rejections a young actor could experience. Yet over time, the sting faded, and what remained was a story that added a dose of humility and humor to his public image. Years later, both Pitt and Applegate would look back on the incident with a sense of amusement rather than embarrassment. Applegate herself has acknowledged what happened in interviews, and Pitt has never seemed bitter about it. In fact, the story's charm lies in its simplicity. Two young celebrities, one unexpectedly bold decision, and a night that didn't quite go according to plan. In the grand scope of Brad Pitt's romantic history, this date may not have had the emotional depth or long-term impact of his later relationships, but it remains a standout example of how unpredictable and unpolished early Hollywood life could be. Even for someone as charismatic as Brad Pitt, not every date would end with a perfect Hollywood ending. For audiences, It was one of those delightful pieces of celebrity trivia that proves even the most admired stars have their awkward moments. Brad Pitt met Juliette Lewis on the set of the TV movie Too Young to Die, a gritty crime drama where Pitt played a drifter who gets involved with Lewis's troubled character. Pitt was 26 at the time and Lewis was just 16, an age gap that both acknowledged later without making it the centerpiece of their story. At the time, it was their connection and shared passion for acting that seemed to dominate the conversation, at least among those who knew them personally. The romance quickly grew beyond the confines of the set. They moved in together not long after, sharing a home in Los Angeles during the years when Pitt was still a rising star, known mostly for supporting roles in television and small films. Lewis was also establishing herself as one of Hollywood's most promising young talents, fresh off National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation and gearing up for more serious projects. For Pitt, this was a relationship filled with youthful intensity, late-night conversations about work, and a shared determination to make it in an industry that often chews people up before they have a chance to prove themselves. Their public appearances were frequent, and they rarely shied away from being photographed together. Pitt was still years away from the A-list status that Thelma and Louise and Legends of the Fall would bring. But in the early 90s, he was already attracting attention. With Lewis by his side, the media began painting them as one of the most interesting young couples in Hollywood. But that attention came with a cost. Paparazzi interest was steadily increasing. And Lewis, who was still a teenager when the relationship began, later admitted she never liked being under that kind of spotlight. In interviews years later, Lewis reflected on how overwhelming the press could be, especially when she was still figuring out who she was as a person and as an actress. For Pitt, it was a first real taste of what constant public interest could do to a relationship. He was beginning to understand that fame doesn't just shape a career, it shapes personal lives too, sometimes in ways that neither partner can control. The scrutiny was different back then compared to the modern tabloid era, but for a young couple trying to live normally, it was still suffocating at times. Despite the challenges, Pitt and Lewis managed to stay together for 3 years, which was a significant stretch given the pressures they faced. They worked together again in California in 1993, a dark road thriller that mirrored some of the gritty edge they had experienced in real life. But shortly after filming, their romance came to an end. Both cited the natural changes that come with growing up and evolving careers, rather than any major conflict. Pitt would later describe Lewis as someone he deeply cared for, and Lewis said she had nothing but good memories, even if the lifestyle that came with dating Pitt wasn't something she enjoyed. By the time their relationship ended, Pitt had learned the valuable lesson that love in Hollywood doesn't exist in a vacuum. It is constantly exposed to external pressures, and no matter how strong the connection, the environment can test it relentlessly. This early chapter in his romantic history gave him insight into how fame could magnify every high and every low in a relationship. And with that experience behind him, he was about to step into yet another high-profile romance, one that would bring its own unforgettable twist: love and loss. Brad Pitt and Gwyneth Paltrow first crossed paths in 1994 on the set of the thriller Seven. Their roles required them to play an on-screen couple, and that connection carried over effortlessly into their off-screen lives. Almost immediately, the two became one of Hollywood's most talked-about pairings. Both were young, talented, and widely admired for their style and charisma, and the public couldn't get enough of their romance. From the start, Pitt and Paltrow appeared completely at ease with each other. Their red carpet appearances were full of genuine affection, holding hands, exchanging smiles, and occasionally sharing small, unguarded moments that made them seem refreshingly real despite their superstar status. In interviews, Pitt spoke warmly about her, and Paltrow often referred to him as her best friend. It was a relationship that, for many, felt authentic in a world where celebrity pairings often seemed carefully managed. By 1996, the couple's bond had grown strong enough for Pitt to propose. The announcement made headlines around the world, and many fans believed this was the beginning of Hollywood's next enduring power couple. Pitt's sincerity and Paltrow's elegance seemed perfectly matched, and their engagement was celebrated as a natural next step in their love story. However, less than a year later, in 1997, the engagement came to an unexpected end. The breakup was met with surprise, as there had been little outward sign of strain. In later interviews, Paltrow explained that she had been in her early 20s and simply wasn't ready for the commitment of marriage. She admitted that her age and emotional immaturity at the time played a significant role in the decision. It was not a case of betrayal or bitter disagreements. Rather, it was about timing and readiness, two factors that even deep affection can't always overcome. The split was handled with mutual respect. Both Pitt and Paltrow refrained from negative public comments about each other, choosing instead to remember the good parts of their time together. In fact, years later, Paltrow would speak highly of Pitt, calling him a wonderful person and acknowledging the important role he had played in her life. Pitt, too, appeared to hold no resentment, and their ability to look back on the relationship fondly suggests that the bond they shared was genuine. For Pitt, this relationship marked one of the most emotionally important chapters of his personal life up to that point. It was a rare instance where his private emotions were on display for the public, and it offered him an early lesson in how love and career pressures can mix. For Paltrow, the romance provided both joy and a learning curve, giving her a clearer sense of what she needed in a long-term partner. While their engagement didn't end in marriage, it left behind a sense of mutual admiration and what-if curiosity that still lingers in public memory. To many observers, Paltrow remains a contender for the title of the love of his life. As Pitt himself once said in a 1996 interview, Brad Pitt began dating Jennifer Aniston in 1998 after being introduced by their managers. From their earliest appearances together, there was a natural ease that made them relatable despite their A-list status. By the time they married in July 2000 in an elaborate Malibu ceremony, complete with fireworks and tight security, they had already become Hollywood's golden couple. During their 5-year marriage, Pitt and Aniston seemed inseparable. They often appeared at premieres and awards shows arm in arm, sharing affectionate moments that the media eagerly captured. Both were at the peak of their careers, Pitt taking on a mix of blockbuster and dramatic roles, and Aniston enjoying massive success with Friends. Together, they projected a sense of stability, humor, and partnership that fans adored. However, life in the spotlight came with challenges. Their busy schedules meant long stretches apart, and media scrutiny of their personal lives was relentless. Questions about starting a family became a constant in interviews, adding pressure to an already high-profile marriage. By early 2005, rumors of trouble began circulating, intensified by Pitt's on-screen chemistry with Angelina Jolie while filming Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Though both Pitt and Jolie denied any romantic involvement before his separation, speculation was fierce. When Pitt and Aniston announced their split in January 2005, it shocked the entertainment world. Their joint statement emphasized love and respect, but the media storm that followed painted a more dramatic picture. The divorce finalized later that year, but public interest in their relationship never faded. Many saw Aniston as the wrong party, and she received an outpouring of sympathy, while Pitt faced criticism for moving on quickly. The so-called Team Jen and Team Angelina divide became a pop culture phenomenon, dominating magazines and entertainment news for years. Over time, both moved on with their lives and careers. Pitt started a long-term relationship with Jolie, while Aniston focused on acting and personal projects. Yet, the idea of what could have been between them persisted. Fans often cited their natural chemistry and shared laughter as signs that theirs was a rare connection. In recent years, moments of public interaction between Pitt and Aniston, such as backstage at the 2020 SAG Awards, reignited speculation and nostalgia. Their warm, friendly exchange sent social media into overdrive, with many wondering if there was still a spark. Both, however, have maintained that they are simply friends and wish each other well. For some, Aniston remains the strongest contender for the love of Brad Pitt's life. Their marriage, while brief by Hollywood standards, left a lasting impression because of the genuine affection and compatibility they displayed. It wasn't marred by public feuds or bitterness, and their continued mutual respect speaks to the depth of their bond. Whether their story was a case of true love lost or simply the right people at the wrong time, the fascination remains. Keep watching as we explore how Angelina Jolie would turn Brad Pitt's life into one of the most talked-about love stories in Hollywood. An evolution. The start of Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt's relationship was anything but quiet. Tabloids filled their covers with photographs from the set, candid shots of the two together, and endless commentary on what it all meant. For Pitt, it was the beginning of a new chapter defined by a shared passion for causes that mattered to them both. From early on, Jolie's humanitarian work influenced Pitt. Together, they threw themselves into global causes, visiting refugee camps, advocating for children in need, and using their platform to spotlight crises around the world. It was a side of Pitt the public hadn't seen so prominently before, and for many, their partnership symbolized a merging of celebrity power with global responsibility. They also built a family, and a large one at that. Over the years, the couple welcomed 6 children, a mix of biological and adopted, creating one of Hollywood's most famous blended families. Parenthood became central to their public image. Whether attending premieres with their children or being photographed on trips abroad, the Brangelina family was a constant presence in the media. In 2014, after nearly a decade together, they married in a private ceremony at their French estate. For fans, it felt like the fairy tale ending to one of Hollywood's most high-profile romances. But behind the scenes, cracks had already begun to show. By 2016, the relationship took a dramatic turn. Jolie filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. The split was far from quiet. Custody battles and personal allegations made headlines worldwide. The fallout was messy and public, showing a clear difference from the united front they had once shown. The breakup reshaped Pitt's image once again. While he had always been a fixture in celebrity news, this period brought a more vulnerable side of him into focus. Interviews following the split showed a man reflecting on his life choices, fatherhood, and the toll of living in the public eye. The Pitt-Jolie chapter remains one of the most defining in his personal history. It combined intense passion, global advocacy, family devotion, and a very public unraveling. For many, Jolie was the woman who pushed Pitt to grow, challenged him in ways no one else had, and left a lasting mark on both his personal and public life. But with the dust settling, one question remains. After all these relationships, who truly holds the title of Brad Pitt's greatest love? After the high-profile and emotionally charged years with Angelina Jolie, Brad Pitt entered a different chapter of his personal life, one marked by calmer connections and a deliberate step back from public attention. His post-divorce years seemed less about grand gestures and more about finding balance. In 2018, whispers linked him to MIT professor Neri Oxman, an architect and designer admired around the world for her work. While their connection was never officially confirmed, reports suggested a friendship built on shared creativity and deep conversation. It was a refreshing change from Pitt's usual Hollywood-centered romances, hinting at his desire for more substance over spotlight. That same year, he was briefly linked to German model Nicole Poturalski. Their appearances together sparked gossip columns, especially when rumors circulated about her existing marriage being an open arrangement. The relationship, however, ended quickly and without fuss, lacking the drama that once defined Pitt's love life. Since 2022, his most steady companion has been jewelry designer Inés de Ramón. Unlike many of his past relationships, this one has largely stayed out of the tabloids. Friends and insiders describe her as grounded and supportive, giving Pitt a sense of calm during life's ups and downs. Their bond became even more important in 2025 when Pitt faced one of the hardest moments of his life, the death of his mother. Those close to him say Inés was by his side during that time, helping him cope with the pain and offering a strong and steady presence. This period in Pitt's romantic life shows a man who has learned from decades of very public relationships. Gone are the red carpet power couple appearances that once dominated headlines. Instead, he now seems content with companionship that does not need to be shown off in front of flashing cameras or constantly discussed in the media. It is a change that points to personal growth, as he appears to value privacy, stability, and genuine connection more than ever before. For someone who has lived most of his adult life in the glare of fame, Pitt's decision to keep his personal world more contained may be one of his most important choices yet. Instead of chasing the thrill of grand passion or picture-perfect romance, he appears to be looking for something more lasting and real. If his earlier relationships were about intense love stories and public fascination, these later years have been about redefining what love means to him. And perhaps, in this calmer chapter, Brad Pitt is finding exactly what he has been searching for all along, not just a partner, but a life that feels like his own. But what if the person Brad Pitt confesses she was the love of my life was someone we've all known about from the very beginning? An enduring legacy. In 2020, the backstage reunion between Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston at the Screen Actors Guild Awards became one of the most talked about celebrity moments in years. Cameras caught them greeting each other warmly, sharing laughs, and even holding hands briefly as they congratulated one another. Those few seconds were enough to send the internet into a frenzy, with fans and entertainment outlets dissecting every glance and smile. Many felt they were watching two people who had never truly let go of each other, despite the years apart. In the years since, Pitt and Aniston have kept their connection alive. They have spoken highly of each other in interviews, with words that go beyond polite Hollywood pleasantries. The mutual respect is evident, and so is the easy way they seem to fall back into conversation whenever they cross paths. Behind the scenes, they have reportedly collaborated on charity efforts and remained in touch during life's tougher moments. While neither has publicly confirmed any romantic revival, their public appearances continue to fuel speculation. For many fans, the sight of Pitt and Aniston together again brings a sense of nostalgia. Their marriage in the early 2000s was the picture of Hollywood glamour, and their split in 2005 left countless people stunned. Over the years, rumors about the reasons behind their divorce and whether they stayed in contact never truly faded. That's why their 2020 SAG Awards interaction felt almost like a scene from a long-awaited sequel. It didn't take much for people to imagine that old feelings might still be there. Insiders have suggested that Pitt's supposed "love of my life" remark, made in private but later leaked, could very well be about Aniston. The theory has weight for several reasons. For one, Pitt has spoken about how his divorce from her was handled with care, and how they parted without lasting bitterness. In Hollywood, where public feuds and harsh words often follow breakups, their calm and respectful approach stood out. Many believe the words weren't just about past love, but perhaps about an enduring one, a bond that has evolved, but never truly disappeared. Some friends of the pair say their relationship today is stronger than it was during their marriage, even if it is not romantic. They describe a sense of trust and familiarity that only comes from having weathered both public pressure and private heartbreak. Others believe that if circumstances were different, they might have found their way back to each other more openly. Still, Pitt and Aniston remain guarded about how they label their relationship. Both have been through enough public scrutiny to know that once they confirm anything, the headlines will take on a life of their own. So when fans hear about Pitt referring to someone as the love of my life, it's no surprise that many picture Jennifer Aniston. Brad Pitt's love life has been watched, analyzed, and debated for over 3 decades. From romances to high-profile marriages, each chapter in his story has left a lasting impression on fans and the media. While the names may have changed over the years, the public's fascination with his search for lasting love has remained constant. Gwyneth Paltrow brought youthful passion and depth, making many believe she was his soulmate at the time. Their red carpet appearances and public affection turned them into one of the 90s most talked-about couples, even if they never made it to the altar. The breakup left questions hanging in the air about what could have been if the timing had been right. Then came Jennifer Aniston, with whom he formed what many saw as Hollywood's golden marriage. Angelina Jolie was perhaps his most transformative partner. Together, they built a blended family and engaged in humanitarian work across the globe. Their relationship combined love, purpose, and a shared vision of making a difference. But the breakup was messy and public, turning what was once a symbol of passion into a headline-heavy custody battle. After his split from Jolie, Pitt's approach to relationships appeared to change. He stepped away from public romance, choosing instead to date quietly and avoid spectacle. Names like Neri Oxman, Nicole Podorowski, and Inez de Ramon surfaced in the press, but these connections were far less publicized. Yet, the whispers of a rekindled bond with Jennifer Aniston keep echoing, as Pitt reportedly admitted in private that he once lost the love of my life. Many couldn't help but wonder if he was talking about her. This is where the mystery lives on. Was his confession a reference to the youthful magic he shared with Paltrow, the golden years with Aniston, or the family-driven chapter with Jolie? Or perhaps it was about someone away from the cameras entirely, a love story the public never fully saw. Each relationship shaped Pitt in different ways, from the impulsive passion of his early career to the grounded connections he seeks now. And maybe that's why people remain so invested. His journey mirrors what so many experience: love found, love lost, lessons learned, and the hope that the next chapter might be the one that lasts. The truth may never be revealed, and perhaps that's for the best. After all, some stories are meant to be felt rather than fully explained. What do you think about Brad Pitt's true love of his life? Was it Jennifer Aniston, Gwyneth Paltrow, Angelina Jolie, or someone entirely unexpected? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear them. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the following video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.